Pokémon Presents has just been announced for next week, and we are very close to finding out just what the Pokémon Company has in store for the next installment of main series Pokémon games. Pokémon fans have been talking about the next Pokémon title either being Legends Johto or Legends Unova, as well as the possibility of Johto and Unova remakes for a while now, and for good reason. But I'm going to put my neck on the line and say that neither of these are coming in the next main series release cycle. Now, by the time this video has reached you, that announcement may have already happened. So was I right? If so, please address me as Lord Gold the Clairvoyant in the comments and in stream chat from now on. Thank you. But in all seriousness, why do I think that the next games won't be Legends Johto or Unova, or remakes, and what is coming next? You'll have to stay along until the end of the video to find out my prediction, but for now, let's dive into the reasons as to why we won't be seeing another Legends game or a BDSP style remake. Now, since Legends Arceus came out, Pokemon fans have sort of assumed that there will be more future Legends games, forming a series under the Legends title. Legends Kyurem, Legends Celebi, etc. But I've always been skeptical of this view for a number of reasons. One of those reasons is that Pokemon have always titled their games in unusual ways. Sometimes these are series like Mystery Dungeon and Pokemon Ranger, which in the past did in fact go on to have sequels, and some of which, despite essentially being a sequel, had a completely different title. So whilst the next game is almost certainly going to take key elements from some of the innovative features that Legends Arceus introduced in terms of gameplay and functionality, I don't think that just copy and pasting Legends, insert legendary here, is going to be a thing. Couple that with the simple fact that Arceus is God. It's literally at the top of the Pokemon family tree. You just can't top it, or at least it would certainly be controversial. It was the first Pokemon anyway. But in essence, it could be a bit of a bland move from a marketing perspective. Now also, the Legends Arceus games weren't perfect. Now for me, Legends was such a refreshing game for its time. It looked beautiful, it was an original concept expanding on a beloved generation that was originally built for a handheld system, and therefore was a tile-based region, which was then turned into a vast landscape in one of the best ways. The story was one of the darkest and had a plot twist that wasn't necessarily hinted at in a shove-it-in-your-face kind of way. They took the Gen 4 source material and made something original, but simultaneously with that nostalgic feel. It was a fantastic blend. And so the point here is that the Pokemon Company will likely try to replicate the approach of taking the source material of Gen 2 or Gen 5 and expanding on it, but that won't necessarily result in the form of a Legends game for either Unova or Johto. So yes, Legends did start a new trend, but more so in its actual approach to future games than simply starting a Legends game series. So I think we've covered pretty well that the next game probably won't be called Legends Celebi or Legends Kyurem, but what about a Unova or Johto remake? Well, as you can probably guess, I don't think we're getting that either, at least in the way the majority would expect it. However, just to cover myself here, I do think that this happening, as well as some sort of new imagination of Johto or Unova, is way more likely than another Legends game. The last time Pokemon straight up remade a generation, we got the chibi version of Sinnoh. The sales were good, but a lot of people didn't like the style and were quite underwhelmed by them, particularly because they lacked the improvement that Platinum had already made to these games back in 2007. Now, if Legends Arceus wasn't announced alongside BDSP, there would have been a lot of outrage that BDSP was underwhelming, but then again, not working on two games simultaneously may have allowed much more time and care to be poured into BDSP, which could have balanced things out. But I believe that getting both was actually the best case scenario, and seeing some of the stuff that's being done with the BDSP engine, for example, just affirms that for me. Crucially, Pokemon will have learned from this experience. They found a way now to split the developer duties and get a combined 30 million sales in one remake season, which is by far the most they've ever gotten. Usually they get somewhere between 7 and 15 million sales for a remake season. So you can bet that when it comes to Unova, they're going to be equipped with that knowledge, but they're also going to be aware that things go stale if you just simply copy and paste them. So there will be a little twist of some sort. Now, it's also worth mentioning here that the new Nintendo Switch model is rumoured to be on the horizon, which is again rumoured to have a technology that upscales the graphics of existing games to PS4-like graphics. I think something that could coincide with the launch of that console is the expansion of the Nintendo Switch Virtual Console, adding systems like the GameCube, DS, 3DS and Wii, and then adding all the legacy, main series, and spin-off Pokemon titles. So this could be in Pokemon's thinking process. Maybe they'll just put all of their efforts into a big Gen 2 and Gen 5 combination game and not bother with that BDSP style remake. And as soon as Pokemon know that they can get a lot of additional sales from the original Black and White era games via the Virtual Console, they have sequels as well. So they would essentially be putting 4 entire games back on sale, and lots of people will be buying multiple versions. Now, I'm not actually sure if they get sale profits directly or if they sell the right for Nintendo to sell the games, but what I do know is they'll find a way to do it and make good money if they can. So I've spoken a lot about what I don't expect, so what do I expect? Now, a lot of you won't know this, but back in 2021, I actually made a prediction that literally no one else on the internet, as far as I could see, made. I actually predicted that the Gen 4 remake would revolve around Arceus, and that actually ended up being the case. So I have a lot riding on this prediction, because if I can make it 2 for 2, like I said before, you'll have to refer to me in the comments as. But in all seriousness, I think Celebi is probably one of the most underutilized legendary / mythical Pokemon in the games, and whilst I don't think that Legend Celebi makes sense, the fact that its entire basis is that it time travels lends itself very much to the direction that Pokemon have been going lately in their stories. Seeing the Pokemon universe across different points in time is a huge focus right now, so Celebi could be a really cool way to enable the player to travel not only to the past but also perhaps to the future, and that in itself could be the basis of a new game that is something beyond a Legends title, but effectively functions in a similar way. Now imagine being able to use Celebi's time travelling capabilities to see different versions of the Johto map. Maybe at one point you could go back in time and witness the Ekrotik Towers burning, understand how the legendary beasts were resurrected by Ho-Oh, and why Lugia banishes itself underwater to hide its power from the world. But also you can go forwards to the future to see how much Goldenrod has been modernised and gentrified, a new look magnet train perhaps. Maybe the region itself is even bigger with new areas to visit, like to the west of Cyanwood, beyond the Battle Tower, or north of the Lake of Rage. In the future, trainers in the region may have figured out how to evolve their Johto Pokemon. As we know, many of the Kanto and Johto Pokemon now have evolutions. And speaking of Kanto, Kanto always goes hand in hand with Johto. And I know some people may be rolling their eyes at the idea of seeing Kanto again, especially as we just got Let's Go not too long ago for the very same console that this new game would likely be on. And whilst Let's Go was a beautiful 3D imagining of Gen 1, it was still effectively an upscaling of the original tile-based Kanto map from Red and Blue in 1996. We've never seen a Legends Arceus or Breath of the Wild style expansive 3D take on Kanto, probably because they've been too scared to mess with those OG games that started it all, and I think they may have feared that tile-based Kanto map being so sacred to people that they dare not change it. But I think now people realise if you want to play those games that way, you now have multiple ways you can do that with the legacy titles, and they're all still super fun to play in this day and age in their own ways, especially with ROM hacks, and Pokemon will be aware of ROM hacks. And with the success of Legends Arceus, reimagining the Kanto and Johto map are probably what's going to scratch the itch and capture that magic in a way that doesn't feel like yet another reskin of remakes we've already seen. With all that being said, I still think Unova may somehow be tied to this, so we have a few options. One is a Johto and Kanto revisit, or a prequel featuring both the original 2 regions but a canonical sequel in the same way that Black 2 and White 2 were sequels of Black and White, probably focusing on a story that covers both regions, especially as they're geographically close, and including Kanto is never exactly going to upset anyone. But then again, perhaps it really would be more focused on Johto, as that's technically the region that's more due a remake. But it does really feel like Unova is due some attention too, and there is a chance in my mind that Johto and Unova could be connected in some ways, and that a new game might feature elements of both Gen 2 and Gen 5. And this has been alluded to by some of the prominent leakers in the community. We are now entering a territory where generations that are due remakes are going to overlap, essentially creating demand for 2 regions at once: Johto and Unova, Kalos and Hoenn, Galar and Sinnoh, and so on. And there definitely could be potential links between Johto and Unova. Unova Legend speaks of the original dragon, of which Reshiram, Zekrom and Kyurem are all parts of. It has a lot of dragon lore around Icarus City, the Dragon Spiral Tower, And Johto too has a lot of dragon folklore in Blackthorn with Claire, Lance and the Dragon Tamer people, who are descendants of a long line of Dragon Tamer folk. So let me officially lock my prediction in. And I'm never going to be 100% correct, but I think we are going to see a Johto focused game that may also have elements of Unova and or Kanto. It would be an original idea that expands on some of the key features we've seen in recent main series games, like the player taking damage, a further expansion of the Synchro Machine functionality, and perhaps something new like time travel. But I believe they'll fix the highly criticised battle system from Legends Arceus and make it something a little more traditional, but perhaps with some sort of small twist. Essentially a new gameplay gimmick that makes this upcoming game unique. Perhaps an expansion of the DNA Splicers fusion gimmick could be something that we could see. Imagine something like a fused version of Ho-Oh and Lugia, the heart and soul Pokemon. But I think there is every possibility for a DLC or post-game that features Kanto and or Unova if they're not already part of the main story, and I think that could tie in with the upcoming 30th anniversary of Pokemon. I mean, Kanto in particular would be an extremely appropriate DLC to add to a Johto game. And you can imagine it would launch in February 2026 if they get their timings right, which would be in the month of Pokemon Day, marking the 30th anniversary. That would be unreal. But get your comments and predictions in below and let me know what you think. Hit that subscribe button and come through to my streams on Tuesday and Friday evenings. Until next time, love you gang.